diametrically opposite of what's going to happen in the second part. And the conflict comes suddenly, like unexpected, unpredictable. I think that enhances the story and the characters and the characterizations of the characters too.
Definitely. Let's see if I can share my screen. Let's see if this works. Oh, that's all right. It's pretty basic. Exactly. These are great answers to sort of back it up more simply from what you were saying. In order to have a story, you need to have a character who wants something. So a character who has a goal. Um, that's basically all you need for a story. If they get what they want easily and right away, you have a very boring story. Um, so in addition to a character who has a goal, you'll need an obstacle. An obstacle can be a person, a situation, it can be a flaw or something interior to the character themselves. Um, but yes, you'll have a goal and an obstacle. The stronger the goal, the stronger the obstacle, oftentimes the more interesting the story. And then the character will make an action, will do something to try to combat the obstacle, get around the obstacle, resolve the obstacle. And frequently, this action backfires. Whatever the character does actually makes the problem worse. Um, and then the character, being a consistent character, will try something similar. Will try a different angle, but something consistent with their character still. And it can go back and forth like this, where the action has a reaction, making the situation worse and worse and worse until the character changes their behavior, and then the obstacle resolves. That's like one structure, or basic structure for the back half of a story. Um, an example I like, it's pretty simple, but you've got a character who is chasing a bus. Even as simple as somebody running after a bus, we feel ourselves like leaning into that story. Like, are they going to catch it or not? Even if it's as basic as that. Um, yeah. Eh, Next, I'd like to open the question of, so if we've got a story, how do we know what what medium we want to present that in? So in my case, I'm talking about screenwriting. Um, why, like, why would somebody decide to write a movie? How do you know a story would be best as a movie versus a novel or um, a poem or a letter or a song? Uh, what what do you need for a movie specifically, or what are considerations when you have a story and you're wanting to pick what how to tell it?
It has to be more visual.
Definitely. Yeah, novels and things you can have most of it be somebody's inner thoughts. Not so much with a movie for sure.
I think it depends on how much visualization the story needs. So if it's something that can be conveyed through a poem also, and the reader can visualize it on their own, and if that much is enough, then a poem is sufficient. But if I need to create a sort of a whole scene out of it, and I need to express my own idea in a visual format, then I will make a movie out of it. So it's a
Yeah, that's a really good
how
answer.
open to interpretation you want it to be.
Yeah, movies are the the share like the audience is always doing some of the lifting, suspending their disbelief, but in a poem or a novel, they're doing all the visuals, right? Like you're sort of you're feeding their imagination, but they're playing it in their head and on the screen. Yeah, the filmmakers get a lot more control over what exactly people are seeing.
I feel it is also dependent on the complexity of the story. So if it is easier for to convey the story and it is simple, then it is mostly like short stories and storybooks are preferred. But when you have a complex, plot or complex thought to imagine, which will be harder to visualize it in a in a very short time, then you prefer for a graphic novel or a movie, I guess.
I I also feel it depends on the kind of medium and the kind of tangibility you want in terms of what you want to put across. So I feel like a poem can also do justice to your the tangibility of it and the viscerality of it, if that's how you want to portray it. But if you want people to consume it visually, if you because since visual consumption is also so, I wouldn't say apparent, but it's also, we love seeing things versus reading about them. But I've also known, like, we also know of poems that are very, that really capture you. So I also feel it's a very, it's an artistic choice, and it's a choice of medium that subject to every artist.
Also, if we are making something which is like we don't have a visual reference of something already existing in the world, then if we write a book or a poem or it kind of, it doesn't give that entire picture. So like when we are making, let's say, sci-fi films or something, just writing about it would probably not give the exact picture that the author has in mind. So, because we probably don't have previous references, visual references in our world of those things.
When I read the Harry Potter books, I envisioned, like before I saw the movies, I envisioned like them going to school basically in the same building I went to school. Like I was just like, oh yeah, it's like and then I saw the movies, I was like, oh, a castle. Like I didn't. Yeah.
I want to ask one thing. Why is it often said that, or rather believed that, the novel is much better than the film?
That's a good question. And um that brings up, yeah, like there's certain stories that are told in multiple mediums, right? Like they're a book first and then they get adapted to a movie. Um, and I think it's a little bit with what we're talking about here, like different stories are better suited to different mediums, and that like in order to adapt a novel to film, for example, there's some ways you have to reconceptualize it totally because it was fit for the novel first, if that makes sense. So it's not like simply sliding it from the novel straight into a movie. You have to like take it apart and then put it back together. And, and sometimes that goes well. And I think sometimes it sort of resists that format change.
Is it
Um,
something that like comes to you
this is, oh, go
organically?
on.
Oh, yeah, I'm also trying to be a writer. In fact, I am one. So just a question, like, is it something that comes to you organically, like deciding which format is best suited, like a novel or like a movie for that particular story? Or is there like a thought process behind this? Just a question.
That's a good question. I think since I've been focusing on writing screen like scripts for feature films, that's informed kind of the ideas I've had, starting out with like the visuals in mind. And also, I mean, this was mentioned, the length of it. It's like you need a story, enough needs to happen that you can fill, 90 minutes to 2 to 3 hours. It's like there's like a certain like scope that goes into it. Um, yeah, so I think I'm sort of presenting this like you have an idea what is the format. I've always sort of started with the format and then come up with ideas, I feel like is how it's worked for me.
Thank you.
Um, Something else to mention is unlike a novel or an essay or a poem or something like that, movies are very expensive. So it's something where sometimes I think about this, it feels like a bit ridiculous to be like, I need $50 million in George Clooney in order to like realize my art is like a, kind of thing to propose. But part of the medium itself in that case is that you're in a contract with your, well, literal contract frequently, but part of the contract is that you're going to be fundraising money, there'll be financiers, and you need to make their money back. So the story also has to be commercial in the sense of Hollywood, in Hollywood at least. There's like aspects for some arts councils or countries like will fund art film, there are grants that are like just, make the story because it's worth it in itself. It doesn't have to make its money back. But largely you're part of a commercial enterprise. And I think that's like an important thing to consider when writing the film as well, especially if you'd like to do more than one. It's like important that it's making its money back. Another thing that I like to think about with films is they're meant to be consumed generally in one sitting, which isn't true for everything. Um, and they can be consumed as a group. You can watch with other people versus many forms of art are meant for one person at a time, um, which I think is neat. Anybody else? I could keep going.
I had a question that so I was recently working on a film with a director. I'm also somebody who acts. So he had this question that he'd been working in the commercial sector and he wanted to work on a script, but he said, I'm worried that who will watch this? Because you talked about the commercial sector and whether so, and this is somebody who has a body of work in the commercial sector, but still this thought that, oh, I want to write, I've written something and I want to work with you on this, but I fear that who will watch this? So is that just the thought that is that a pertinent fear to have, or should one, not worry about these things and worry about the feeling one wants to evoke through the writing? And so, of course, there's a balance that one needs to strike, but how far should we think about that balance or think about the commerce of it or think about the logistics? Because you were talking about it right now. So I thought I'll.
Yeah. Do you have a sense when they were saying what was causing that fear? Do you know? What about the story was like provoking that sense of not knowing who would watch it?
Because he made a film about something like back in his film school about something that felt taboo to the people he worked with in the film school. It was very interesting to me. But when like his professor saw it, they were like, "Oh, what are you showing? What are kids doing here? We don't want to have this impression on the." It's an interesting film. If I have the chance, I'll share it sometime. But to me, it was really great. Like I loved the way it was written. But the first reaction of his peers was like, "Oh my God! Like, can you make a normal film? Why is it so weird?" So I think also the sense of, maybe I'm answering my own question, but the sense of like acceptance, or like, is my idea should not be weird enough, or my idea should not be whatever weird means in that scenario or that society, or that maybe what's weird here might
Yeah.
be in a different setting. So yeah, just that, I guess.
Yeah. I think what that's making me think of is there's like, it's kind of seems like this contradiction, but for films, it's like people want something they've already seen before. They want it to feel pretty familiar, but also completely new. So it's like this, yeah, so that I feel like that weirdness could go either way, if that makes sense. Like if it feels like unrecognizable, or like I don't even know what this is, I can't connect to this, I don't have like, maybe eventually stories go that way enough to where it kind of links up. But then the weird could be really good, like where it's like this is a recognizable world but seen through this new lens. Um yeah, and the question about how much to think of like who the film is for, um I think it's like the first person it should be for is, I think, yourself, but not the like ego stoking self, in like your sort of critical audience self, like yourself as a viewer. Um, and if it's making you lean in, if it's making you feel things, or you like if it's engaging you, um, that's a good sign. And then the like, who's your audience? I think that's tricky. It's a good thing to know, especially sort of later on, maybe in the process, when it comes to production time, you know, uh, or pitching a script to a team. But if it's a good enough story in a lot of ways, somebody else can like the market, figure out who exactly it's for. Um, so it's something like I think that's good to have in mind, but also I wouldn't worry too much about, if that makes sense. Something else important with the movie, with the script, I think, is that this is a little bit less to do with the story and a bit more about you as a personality. A lot of mediums, you'll have quite a bit more control, or like you'll be working quite a bit more on your own, if that makes sense. Like if you're writing a novel, you'll work with an editor, but the editor is still, quite a bit more hands off, or is sort of doing things either together or according to what you want. If you're a playwright, um, the the script is king. Like it's like very important to like the actors, the director, everybody very much respects the text. If you're a screenwriter, you're embarking on a group project in basically all of the sense of what a group project means. So you're signing up to very much collaborate with a director, with actors, with the producer, with the financiers, with the people putting the money. Like they'll have ideas, and um you'll largely want to like at least, like consider them. So I think it's important to go in like wanting to work as a team, wanting to make an artistic piece with other people that is going to include other people's input. And in fact, when writing a script, it's sort of written in a way for other people to elaborate on. Like not everything is spelled out super specifically, because you know that, for example, like a professional costumer is going to come on board. So, you give a general sense of like what this character might be and what they might wear, and then you're essentially like handing it off to someone else and being like, you fill in the specifics. Uh, which I think can be really, really wonderful because, you know, as a writer, you're not going to have expertise. You're not going to be a professional in everything. So the really cool part is like every piece of the process, you get to hand off to a professional, somebody who's like passionate and trained and skilled in that particular thing. The downside is sometimes you might not agree with their choices, or like the story that you had at the beginning, you know, sitting at your computer by yourself, like months and months before, gets changed and comes out differently. So there's some trade-offs in that. But the upside is like you get the best, like you get like really high octane everything, or you can, right? Like you have professional actors, or like actors, like you get these like beautiful talented people to say your, and funny dynamic people to say your dialogue, and you get, you know, a director with their vision, like keeping everything together, and somebody in locations finding out like the most interesting places to set these things. Like you get, you know, somebody does the music, like songs are a whole art form in of themselves, and you get to use that in order to like create the emotion you're going for. So like in the end, it can be like the biggest movies, I think, can have the biggest cultural impact of any stories so far. So that's like the prize at the end, but the cost is that you have a bunch of different people with a bunch of different ideas, and like your baby is really going out into the world and getting influenced and getting changed by many, many people. Yeah, I really like that about screenwriting and movie making. But I think, yeah, it's not for everyone necessarily. Any other thoughts on why a movie before we move into specifically about the script? Cool. Okay. So all of this, we're making a movie, we have an idea for a story, we're gonna write a script. What is a script's job? What is a script doing? Who is a script for?
Depends on the genre of the script. In fact, like it can be sci-fi, it can be family drama, it can be love story, it can be thriller, investigative. So all kinds of scripts are there. It depends what does the producer want and the director want, and what does the scriptwriter himself or herself wants it. But to all these things, there is a thread, I think, which is very, very important, and that is emotional and emotions to be there. A script without emotions, or the character, like just portraying dishum on screen, and without convincing that why the character is behaving in a particular manner, and disassociating himself from his wants and needs, I think that is very important in in any script writing, be it any genre. I think even for sci-fi, I think we have to have emotionally charged sci-fi characters. If they are not, they become too mechanical, and maybe audience might reject, because I think human feelings are all over the world is same.
Definitely. I think that's super important. This idea that we consume any art in order to feel something. And I agree, like the script as a starting place for the movie should evoke feelings, should make the reader feel something?
I think script is like coming back to the question. Script is mostly referred for everyone who is involved in filmmaking, because from the process of storyboarding till the acting and till the editing afterwards, post production, it is needed at every stage, because it allows you to set the scene, that at what time it will be shooted, what kind of ambience will be there, and it defines everything in all the dialogues of what time it is going to be and everything. So story is basically a narrative, I can say, and script is planning that narrative to how we will put it forward, how will we present it, basically.
Yeah, exactly. The script is, like you're saying, a planning document for a bunch of different departments. So it's telling the costume, like there's going to be a props person looking through and highlighting all of the props because they need to go buy those props and more. There's going to be, it's for the cinematographer to know how to light something. It's for the actors, of course, to know their dialogue. It's for the director to be pulling the whole thing together. And like you said, yeah, even post-production, the editors can look at it. It's for locations, being like, okay, where do we need, what spots do we need to find? And a bit before all that, like, so it's both, when you're writing a script, it's both you're like talking to a bunch of different professionals looking for a bunch of different things. Um, and you're also like, so it's like this like kind of technical planning document, and it's also a piece of art in the sense that like you're also selling the story itself frequently. Like unless you're coming in already with like a producer who wants you to write it and money and things like that, generally um so you're going to be telling the story, so you want to inspire a reader to visualize this whole world like a novel might. And you want to instruct a bunch of different professionals in how to make it at the same time. And especially for newer screenwriters who are writing something on spec, meaning like on speculation, you're not getting paid for it yet. You need to write it in such a way that it will excite people. It's kind of like you're starting your own heist movie, in the section where you're like assembling your team and like they're going around like convincing all of these specialists to join. Like that's what the script is. So it's like an instructional document, but it's also like a marketing, like you're trying to hook in um everybody from a producer and financiers, but like you're trying to attract a good art director. Like, so it's like something about the film. You want it to be something that somebody who's doing art direction will be like, I can make that look cool. And for actors, like not just your main actors, but actors in every single role, you want to give people something that's exciting to do, something that's interesting, something that's fun. Um, so uh, it's doing a lot of everything in a very sort of efficient, scaled on economical way. Um, oh, there's a question here. What's the difference between a screenplay and dialogue script? They're the same, actually. So I'm going to pull up an example from Juno, which is a script that was written on spec. So it was Diablo Cody wrote it and was not a screenwriter, was an unknown. And this I picked it because it's a pretty standard script in a lot of ways. Like it's doing kind of right down the middle what a script should do. And it was also like so unique and fantastic that it like launched her career. So it's basically what like a script really should be. But you're gonna see it's gonna have the information for everybody. It's going to have information about the location, information about the set design, information about even the editing based on the way it's written, and it will also include the dialogue. I think, let's see if I can share. Oh, I can share. Great. I will put the script, a link to the script in the chat, and I'll also share my screen. And if we could read this together, I think that would be great. I'll assign some parts. Okay. Here's that Google link, and then okay. Can you all see this all right? Yeah. Good enough to read?
Yes.
Okay, it's big enough. Will somebody volunteer to read what's basically the stage directions, the action lines? That's everything from these slug lines, the scene description, to this. So basically everything that's not in dialogue. Who would like to do the bulk of the reading?
I can do it.
And I might not be able to. Thank you. Who would like to be Juno? Did somebody say yes?
Can I be?
Mm-hmm. And then we need a whispered voice.
I can do that.
Thank you. And then a Rolo.
I could do that.
Thanks. And then Tough Girl is the last one, I believe.
I can do that.
Awesome. And we're just going to do the first 3 pages. Yeah, and then we'll talk about it afterwards.
Exterior
So go ahead
Centennial Lane,
and hit it.
dusk. Juno McGuff stands on a placid street in a nondescript subdivision facing the curb. It's fall. Juno is 16 years old, an artfully bedraggled burnout kid. She winces and shields her eyes from the glare of the sun. The object of her rapt attention is a battered living room set, abandoned curbside by its former owners. There is a fetid-looking leather recliner, a chrome-edged coffee table, and a tasteless, latch-hooked rug featuring a roaring tiger.
It started with a chair.
Interior Bleecker House, moldorific basement, night. Flashback. Juno approaches a boy hidden by shadow. He's sitting in an overstuffed chair. She slowly, clumsily lowers herself onto his lap. A 60s Brazilian track plays from a vintage record player.
Do you know how long I've wanted this?
Yeah.
Wizard.
Exterior Centennial Lane continued. A dog barks, jarring Juno back to reality.
Quiet, banana. Hey, shut your gob for a second, okay?
We see a teacup poodle tethered in the yard a few feet away from the abandoned living room set. The dog yaps again.
This is the most magnificent discarded living room set I've ever seen.
She swigs from an absurdly oversized carton of juice and wipes her mouth with the back of her hand. Begin animated title sequence. Continued. Juno marching down various streets, pumping her arms like a jogger and chugging intermittently from the huge carton of juice. We watch her breathlessly navigate suburbia, clearly on a mission. Exterior drugstore day. Finally, a panting Juno arrives at Dancing Elk Drug on the main drag of a small Minnesota suburb, Dancing Elk. The automatic doors of the store part to reveal Juno's flushed, serious face. She carelessly flings the empty juice container over her shoulder and onto the curb. A group of her dropouts with skateboards near the entrance glare at her. She enters the drugstore. Interior drugstore continuous. Rollo, the eccentric drugstore clerk, sneers at Juno from behind the counter. He wears a polyester uniform vest.
Well, well, If it isn't MacGuff the crime dog, back for another test?
I think the last one was defective. The plus sign looked more like a division sign.
Rollo regards her with intense skepticism.
I remain unconvinced.
Rollo pulls the bathroom key out of reach.
This is your third test today, Mama Bear. Your ego is prego, no doubt about it.
An eavesdropping tough girl wearing an oversized jacket and lots of makeup gapes at Juno from the beauty aisle. Continued.
3 times? Oh, girl, you are way pregnant. It's easy to tell. Is your nipples real brown?
A pile of stolen cosmetics falls out of the girl's jacket and clatters to the floor.
False.
Juno crosses and crosses her legs awkwardly, hopping. It's obvious she has to use the bathroom urgently.
Maybe you're having twins. Maybe your little boyfriend's got mutant sperms and he knocked you up twice.
Silencio. I just drank my weight in Sunny D and I have to go. Pronto.
Rollo sighs and slips her the bathroom key. Juno races down out of the aisles.
Well, you know where the lavatory is.
Calling
You
after
pay
her.
for that. You pay for that peace stick when you're done. Don't think it's yours just because you've marked it with urine.
Jesus, I didn't say it was.
Well, it's not. You're not a lion in a pride. These kids acting like lions with their unplanned pregnancies and their sunny delights.
Interior
Awesome.
drugstore.
We'll stop there. Thank you. Well done, readers. What? All right. So these are the first three pages of the whole script. What has the script done so far? What do we know about this world, about the characters? What has it told us?
There's a comic timing to it. Like there's comedy in it definitely because it made us laugh. There is like a dialogue that's used is quite funny. So yeah, like that was my first impression.
Juno's world is being set for us slowly by slowly. So you have a setting that is being defined. You also know something about the weather, at least a little. You know about the people she sort of meets every day, the neighborhood, the relationships. So a social setting, a sort of neighborhood setting. Yeah.
Yeah, say more about that. How would you describe her relationships?
I mean, we know that this is a 16-year-old girl who's kind of, she's pregnant. And the fact that she's going to this drugstore and getting things, and you have people sort of letting her know that you're actually, and she wants to be convinced. So she wants to do it again. And that could be a lot of things. It could be anxiety. It could just be, and just how people are also constructing her character. So you have these flat characters, possibly round characters around her that are giving a sense of the fact that they're hinting to the fact this is also a round character. Like those characters are falling off and sort of rubbing into creating this character. Yeah, a little bit. I don't know if I've answered your question, but just I was thinking in terms of the first thing you shared about how we need one character who's essentially a round character. So I thought of the flat characters around who sort of remain the same across the script. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Just paying attention to more of that actually while I was reading.
Also,
That's
that
great. Yeah, and go on.
sorry. I was going to say also that she has a relationship with everyone and she projects that she has a thick skin and is cool with whatever is happening. But also you can tell that, I mean, later on in the film, you get to know.
Yeah, this time what I noticed, like, in spite of like having read this a bunch of times, is in the beginning she says, "A dog barks, jarring Juno back to reality." She says, "Quiet, banana. Hey, shut your gob." Like she knows everyone, including the dog. Like she just knows. Yeah.
I wanted to ask, what do the omitted parts mean?
So this is I think it says up here. So there's different script. So you will write a script and then you personally rewrite it, but then present it like it's the first thing you've written. Like, oh no, this just came straight out of my head. But then after it's with the production team, you'll go through more rewrites, but after you've shared it with everybody, you have to like distinguish which version it is. So you see these revisions here, and they each go along with different colors. Um, because what happens when you lock a script, you actually number your scenes, and then the team working with like producing the script, this is very important. So like scene 1 is always going to be this exterior Centennial Lane dusk. Meaning if a scene gets cut, you don't just delete it because that would like shift all of the scene numbers from here on out. So it means originally there is more stuff written here. They cut it, they decided they didn't need it, but they leave this omitted so that everybody knows what has happened to scene 4. Like this one doesn't become scene 4 because that would mess everything up like radically. Yeah. So you just leave it in the script, but you call it omitted. Um, Speaking of the professionals whose hands this is gonna go into, if you were the art direct person, props and the sets and things like that, the things you're going to see on screen, what do you know based on this script? What has this script told you? What are you looking for in creating this world?
I think what also stood out to me was like along with all the visual elements and what Katyayani mentioned was that there is a relationship with a whispered voice, which it's jarring her back to reality. So she's probably like she's having a flashback, and whatever was written that the boy was very like she was very maybe not interested as much. So that's setting up a relationship and probably setting us up to like what will happen for the rest of the film.
Yeah, you definitely are getting the sense that this wasn't a planned pregnancy with the love of her life
Yeah,
necessarily. Yeah.
yes.
I want to answer, but I feel like I'm speaking too much.
Go for it.
No, so it says there's a moldorific basement, right? Like right when you were scrolling. So this gives
Yeah.
the idea that we need to create mold and we need a basement. So just a word called moldorific is something for an art director to highlight that yes, there's mold. So the team will then work towards mold, I think, and other things like that. Then you have
Yeah,
the
we're not looking. Go on.
yeah. Yeah, just that like you have the track playing, so you'll have the sound of the Brazilian 60s Brazilian track playing and just these directions. Yeah.
I think the vision seems to be very specific. Like it's almost as if the person has really seen what they really want. I mean, to actually say a 60s Brazilian track plays from a vintage record player as opposed to, there's some music in the background is what I mean, if somebody who's not really thought about it too much would probably write, there's some sort of music, but they're very specific about what exactly. So yeah, I think that's also like interesting and I mean would also make you ask like why this particular music. But yeah, it is quite interesting to note.
Yeah, and there's as writers a big thing to contend with is how much detail to put into a scene. One of the standard sort of rules of screenwriting is that a page of script is estimated or should be about a minute of screen time. So there's a bit of writing it in this way that, like, sort of as we're reading it at the same pace that we would see it on screen, if that makes sense. So it's like the timing of the writing is sort of going into your brain at the same rate that the movie would, if that makes sense. So that's one of the, like, boundaries of writing, is you don't have a ton of time to be describing everything. But also, if you're too generic or don't describe enough, you're not inspiring both the reader, and also these different professionals in these different fields. So yeah, that's like a tension that there's like no sort of specific rules for, other than, I think, which, like, other than you can't be boring. So it's like, keep adding the details, keep adding the specifics, as long as they, like, continue to be interesting and evocative. But not so many that people start being like, yeah, 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 and sort of glazing over and skipping lines. Another specific that I like in here is this drugstore. It's the dancing elk drug, as opposed to a big, like, chain drugstore or something like that. I think we're getting a picture of um somewhere small, a town that's small and out of the way, and not very affluent, definitely working class, with the molderific and things like that. Like, um and also, like, the living room set that she describes as, like, the best, the most magnificent discarded living room set. Like, uh it's a battered living room set. Like, it's not, um like, for Juno, this is like fantastic. This is like the nicest thing, and it's described as fetid looking, tasteless. Like, yeah, it's not the Ritz. All right, we have a few more minutes before the hour. I wanted to open it back up to anything else, any other questions that might have come up, broad or specific, or anything, while I've still got you all.
I want to ask that when we say that are you writing a script or the screenplay? This is a screenplay, right? So when we are writing a script, so are you suggesting that we should not be so descriptive about the scene over there?
It's 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 like, be just descriptive enough, basically. So it's like a practice in economy of words a lot of the time, because you're trying to time it so it's this page a minute, and also not bog it down. There's two reasons, kind of. One is just for the reading, wanting it to be as short and compelling as possible, get the most punch into each individual word that you can. So one is just for the reading experience, and two, you're wanting to so, like, if it's for the art department, you want to get them going without doing their whole job for them. So they're gonna be, like, getting a lot of different pieces, say, for, like, this living room set. That was quite closely described, actually, as far as things go. You have a fetid-looking leather recliner, a chrome-edged coffee table, tasteless latch hook rug featuring a roaring tiger. That's like pretty specific. In part because this living room set seems like it's going to be particularly important, but you wouldn't go into every room and describe the room with that same kind of detail. Like you're gonna want to get like the molderific basement. We have an overstuffed chair and a vintage record player and this like concept of the molderific basement, but nothing else more specific, if that makes sense. And your art director is going to be like, cool, basement, molderific means like not well ventilated, probably no windows or the window won't open, and it's like maybe that wood paneling and the thick dirty carpet, stuff like that. The art director then will take it from there. um so you're gonna want to give them just enough to like point them in the right direction, but not do their whole job for them. In part because it's boring to read, and also in part because like that's why you have them on board, is to be making some of those decisions.
So basically, we just give them hints about it.
Yeah. And like provocative hints, I think too.
I had a question.
I had a question. Is the same script shared with is the same copy shared with every department or like every group? Or is it reworked on? So maybe if it needs to go to the actors, the dialogues will be written with more expression and more emotion of like how they're supposed to act it out. And if it's going to the art department, then there'll be more details for, I mean, does that happen, or is just this one copy shared with everyone?
That's a good question. Yeah, same copy to everybody. Yeah.
I was going to ask, when you're writing a script, and let's say the production value of it, uh, does that interfere with your writing? I mean, do you write consciously knowing what kind of production it is going to entail? And does that change how you write?
I actually do. Having worked in a production company, I think helps me quite a bit. I mean, for me personally, part of my strategy has been to write something that I know will be cheaper to make. Um, and like as a newer writer, that's I think a good strategy. Also, I think you can get away with taking more risks the cheaper it is. Um, so I definitely do. And actually, for me, I feel like it helps add some constraints. Because, if you can write about anything, that gets like a little bit like this. But if I know, like, okay, like to say, so stuff that's cheaper is like fewer locations and fewer characters.
Yeah.
So if you can make it about, it's like the classic like cabin in the woods, one location with 5 characters, that's going to be a much cheaper movie to make than a huge cast with a bunch of different characters and big action shots and things like that. Yeah, so I definitely work that way. The flip side of it too is the same sort of these like contradictions where it's like it's good to, or like, and sometimes you're writing like a Marvel movie and like you will be given all the money on earth, right? So like I've never written something like that. I think it's a different kind of challenge. But if you are writing sort of more cheaply, it's both like writing things that don't cost very much and also writing something in like there's a lot of times these big set pieces is kind of like a special type of scene that can be genre specific, but a lot of times you want one or two things in that kind of are splashy, where it's like where the financiers, the people giving you money is like, aha, that's where the money went, and it's like the spectacle part of
Yes.
movies, which is part of movies, like we are not writing a black box play, like the thing that is like gonna go in the trailer, for example. So it's like, yeah, write cheaply and then, but like specifically write expensive, on purpose for something that's gonna like,
To
yeah,
add to the scale. Yeah.
yeah, to kind of tell everybody like, ooh, yeah. Cool. Well, that's been an hour. Thank you everybody for coming and for participating. It was wonderful talking to you all.
Thank you.
Thank you
Thank
so
you,
much,
Amy.
Amy.
Thank you.
So
Thank you, Amy.
on behalf of
I'd really
everyone, I
like to
just
thank you a lot
thank
for this entire session. Sorry, I came in a bit late. There were some family issues to tackle. But I did catch the majority of your session and it was absolutely thrilling. I hope the rest of the team here had as good a time as me. I get a feeling they did. If there's any assignment or anything, do share it with us. You could share it with Isha and then she'll send it out to the group. And folks, if there's anything you'd like to reach out to Amy for, perhaps just put that on our group and maybe we can have her respond to it. I can send it across to you, Amy, and you can respond to it.
That sounds great.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
All right.
Thank
Have a
you,
good night,
Amy.
everyone.
Thank you
Right.
everyone for joining in.
Have a good day.
Bye.
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 Bye bye. I am sorry for calling you twice. Yeah. I actually didn't
Good. I'm
know.
really glad you did actually.
Yeah,
You should totally do that. So no, don't worry about it.
because she told me, she just mentioned at the start we'll be reading a script. So I thought, let me just reach out to you in case she needs to share it. And that's
I'm glad you did. Yeah.
okay.
Very glad you did.
So I marked everyone's attendance also on the sheet that you shared with me. Just 2 people didn't attend, everybody else was there.
Do you know who they were?
Ashwari and Maitreyi, I think. Let me just confirm and I'll text you. Okay.
Okay. Yeah. Thanks for staying up late and doing this. I hope you had a good time listening and she
Yes,
seems
it
really
was
good.
awesome. Actually, I had a lot of questions. I was jumping in myself.
Yeah, absolutely. You
Yeah.
should. You should totally do that.
It's Ashwari and Maitri. I'll just text you the names. The rest were all there.
And
Okay.
they haven't communicated for any reason, na? They couldn't
No,
make
no.
it and why and all that.
Let me just stop the recording.